knows how Philly is, and he knows how the Eagles are. And that's why we're bringing him on board with us today from the JAKIB Media Eagles post-game show. Mike Missinelli jumps in with us here on Birds 365. Michael, hope you had a happy holiday. Thanks for jumping in.
Yes, and you two guys as well. Good to join you this morning.
Our pleasure. Saints this week. Andy Dalton, career lifetime against the Eagles, 3-0. And people are just dismissing the Saints' chances. Should we be?
Yeah. I don't think the Saints have the power to go up and down with this team for an entire game. But then you got this quarterback situation, Jody. It's really interesting. I think the okie doke is on because they made it clear to the world that he practiced yesterday, Jalen, and I just think it's for cosmetic reasons. I think that they're trying to, fool the Saints a little bit and having to prepare for both quarterbacks. One is completely different than the other. And I don't think he will play. But I think Minshew can win the game by himself against this team, and they survive it and they move on. And, my only problem at that point is Jalen Hurts will have 4 weeks of inactivity and play the first game probably against the Cowboys at home with maybe a little rust. I mean, that's my only concern. I just don't think they're going to risk playing him this weekend.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Mike. First things first, good morning. Welcome to the show. Since we're on this Jalen Hurts topic about how the injury may or could be handled, how do you think the injury should be handled? Should they rest him all the way into the playoffs? Should they, lock up this game today with the New Orleans Saints and throw him in there? Should Minshew start the day and then potentially they throw Jalen Hurts in that final game against the Giants for maybe a series or two or a quarter? How would you handle this if you were the one?
It's a really good question, Tone, and there's no easy answer to it because I don't think he's ready to play this week. So they're going to have to count on Minshew. If Minshew loses to the Saints, I don't think there's any question you have to play Hurts in that last game for a couple of reasons. Number one, you need the game.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, I think you can, ease him back into play. I don't like that inactivity thing. So, in a backwards way, it almost would work out better for the Eagles if they had to win that last game against the Giants with Hurts playing, healed, and give them a little momentum going into the playoffs. But again, it's a precarious situation where a lot of things can go wrong and go bad with that. I don't know. Is there an easy answer to this? It's a very strange situation. You can hope that Minshew beats the Saints, but if he doesn't, then what?
Then we have more avenues and angles to look at going forward. You're exactly right. All right, Mike, I got to get you on the record on this one because I've been dismissed by others. But I've always appreciated you as an outside-the-box thinker. I trotted this out there 2 days ago. And what transpired yesterday with Jalen partially practicing at least kept it going for the possibility on Sunday. Give me the percentage chance, as small as it may be, that Gardner Minshew starts, but Jalen Hurts is activated. And he's on the bench, maybe even third quarterback. You give up one of your defensive linemen. They dress 11 every week. Can they get by with 10 for 1 week? Yeah, sorry about that, Milton Williams. If he's got it sit so they can dress 3 quarterbacks. The Jalen is in there just for, in case of emergency, break glass. That you tell him ahead of time, the plan is to not play you. But in case there's an emergency and Gardner goes down or we're losing in the third quarter, we may put you in there, Jalen. Any chance that that's the Eagles line of thinking?
I think there could be a chance. I mean, that's really outside the box thinking for the coaching staff. I think if they decide that he's not ready to play, I don't think that they would even entertain that notion to be tempted to put him in if Minshew struggles through the first half and they trot him out to start the second half. I don't think they want to do that. I think if they make a decision he can't play, then he can't play in the first half or the second half. So I would be very shocked to see that happen. But then again, that would give the Saints a little something to think about, right? In mid-flight. I don't know.
As the game, as you're getting the inactives before they get coach looks, oh, shoot, Hurts is active? What the hell?
Yeah, I mean, is Sirianni that crafty? Or is he more of a conventional, no, I'm not going to put my player at risk type of guy? I don't know. It's a great question. There's a lot. All right,
so here's the follow-up question, because certainly John and I feel the same on this one. we think Sirianni is down the list of those who are deciding whether Jalen Hurts is going to play or not. Like Howie 1, the team doctor 2, Hurts' mama 3, and then maybe Sirianni like 4th gets to chime in on what Jalen's capabilities are. Do you think he's got that much pull in that circle of deciding whether he plays or not?
You know, you raise a good point, but like I'll take it from if Howie has influence here. Howie's going, why would I put that quarterback at risk when I myself was the idea behind Minshew being able to win games and I signed him? So I believe that he would look at it that way, like that Minshew's my guy and I signed him for a reason, and you're going to see because he's going to beat the Saints.
Well, both Hurts and Minshew are Howie's guys. He can take credit for both of those two guys.
Yeah, but he's protecting. He's got to protect Hurts now because he sees that Hurts is his franchise guy, and Minshew's a throwaway. He's not going to be there next season, so he could throw Minshew in there and say, "See how smart I am? I just won with Minshew. Thank you very much, Gardner. Here's some parting gifts."
Hopefully, one of those parting gifts is a Super Bowl ring. But let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, Mike. You know, Dak Prescott, he put a hurting on this Eagles secondary in this game this past week on Christmas Eve, and it wasn't necessarily their best performance. Guys went down, injuries happened, so on and so forth. But now there's a narrative surrounding this Philadelphia Eagles team, and maybe it's not a new narrative. It's been around, I'm pretty sure. People question if this Eagles defense is capable of handling top-tier quarterback play. And I'm of the mindset of, well, name me a defense that can go 10 for 10 against any elite quarterback. You know, this is a quarterback-driven league. You know, this league is designed around the offense being successful. And like John McMullen always says, good offense trumps good defense 9 times out of 10. So I guess my question for you is, do you think this Eagles defense is ready and prepared to go up against the top-tier quarterbacks that they may face in the playoffs?
So you're going, Tony, you're going beyond the Andy Dalton is not a top.
No. Let me make it clear. I'm foreshadowing, right? I'm talking about once they get to this Super Bowl, right? The Patrick Mahomes, the Joe Burrows of the world, those kind of guys. And look, even if you may not feel this way, Kirk Cousins is playing okay this year. You know what I mean? Dak Prescott is playing okay. So I'm just curious to know what's your confidence in this Eagles defense when it comes to going against above average quarterbacks.
It's an unknown. I mean, it really is an unknown. I mean, you're right. Dak had success against them. He's going to have success in Lincoln Financial Field if he beats the Eagles. San Francisco, I mean, you know, they're probably the most ferocious team they're going to face, and that's not really a quarterback-driven team. Like their defense holds up in Lincoln Financial Field. That's the team I'm most worried about, rather than whether they can beat a good quarterback. If they get to the great quarterback, it's going to be in the Super Bowl. So it's either going to be Josh Allen or Mahomes, and I don't think we'll have an answer to that question. Right now, they're kind of leaking. And, you know, Andy Dalton is not a great player, but he is somehow undefeated against the Eagles. Darius Slay is worrying me. He's had 2 bad games in a row, and, you know, they got the injury of Maddox, and I don't think C.J. Gardner-Johnson is going to be ready to play. Is he? Are they going to play him in that slot to compensate for Maddox? Because, you know, relying on Josiah Scott is worrying me a little bit. I mean, I'm worried about this game because it's so many dominoes that can fall with this game. If they win with Minshew, then their problems are solved, except for that big problem down the road where they're going to throw the starting quarterback in with a lot of rust.
Quick follow-up, Jody, real quick. You brought up Darius Slay and Josiah Scott, and Darius Slay was on the record, maybe not blatantly throwing Josiah Scott under the bus, but let's be honest, we all know what he did there. He kind of tried to, you know, he did the classic CYA, right, covering your own ass. And you know, I wasn't really a fan of it. But I'm curious to know, what was your perspective on Darius Slay handling that situation the way he did? Because we're going to have another Josiah Scott sighting. It's going to happen.
I think Darius has gotten so caught up with the fact that he's like the great player that they have back there that he can't allow for mistakes. And it probably was Scott's fault. You look at the play, apparently Scott was supposed to have that kind of coverage. He didn't recognize it until it was too late.
But you have to protect those young guys, right? The confidence factor is real.
Slay was the trail guy. Now, you're right. But earlier in the game, he got a he got a holding on defensive
TY.
interference on TY also. So, but the last game he wasn't sharp either. So I don't know if he thinks a little too much of himself right now, and he thinks it's going to magically happen because he's a great player. Or, but I expect that he'll rebound from that because he is a good player. But his play has come down a little bit over the last couple of weeks. It's a worry. He's their best player back there, and Bradbury got okey doke too on that one play for a touchdown. So. Yeah, they're a little cracked right now, but against this team, like if this team could put a little heat on them, then I'd have a little bit more worry. But Andy Dalton's not gonna dazzle them in this game.
Nor do I believe that's going to be the case. And I think Slay's actually sitting on a big game, and we'll all be singing his praises this week after rightfully questioning him the way that Tone just did.
Yep.
Tone brought up preparation.
Yes.
You have to cure my curiosity here. I have a preparation question. Mike Missinelli leaves Shea Missinelli and heads down to Ocean. You get there whenever you get there, hour before kickoff, just as the ball's being kicked off, halftime, whatever. I don't know. I don't need to know. But when you do you sit next to Seth Joyner? Or do you want to be on the other side of the building, away from Seth Joyner, getting ready for the game? How does Mike Missinelli prep in relation to his angry cohort on the post-game show, Seth Joyner?
I sit next to him. Tone will tell you the setup. We have these two lounge chairs. I sit in one to the right. He sits in one on the left. Darkgun sits on the sofa, and Devin sits on the end of the sofa when she joins the crew. Most of the time, his observations are really interesting. Like he'll call something on a coverage that we haven't seen, and so you learn from him a lot. But then, his whole thing this year, and he softened a little bit. He softened because obviously their defensive numbers are pretty significant. And from the beginning of the season to now, like his whole thing was you got to put more pressure on the quarterback. You got to put more pressure on the quarterback. Well, the fact is they've done that with a four-man rush most of the time,
and they
lead
the NFL in sacks, and they're opening up a widening lead.
Yeah, and so he's been kind of quiet on Gannon, but. You have to know Seth to know that Jonathan Gannon, as the cerebral nouveau, the young defensive coordinator whose picture is like, I always look at Jonathan Gannon and guys like that as when you go in a Hallmark store and there's this stock picture with the picture frame. Like that's the Jonathan Gannon type that they hire in the NFL now. So that's not Seth's type of guy. Seth's type of guy is the brash balls out, Buddy Ryan, Jim Johnson type of thing. And so you have to allow for that. I mean, that was his era. That's what he grew up with how football should be. So most of the time we just kind of smile at him and go, but Seth, look how our defense is ranked. But I learned a lot from him because he calls stuff, prior to the snap and this is going to happen. And, he really comes at it from a football player's view, a trained football player, coach football player's view.
Yeah, I'm thinking about this coaching staff. You brought him up. Seth always gives Jonathan Gannon a lot of hell, and it's one of the funniest things to listen to be quite honest with you. But despite this 13-2 record, this coaching staff doesn't have any experience in dealing with a deep playoff run. And I guess my question for you is, do you believe they have what it takes to coach this team and push all the right buttons at the right time during this run? We remember what Doug Peterson and his staff did. They were synonymous. They were in sync. They were just pushing all the right buttons at the right time, especially in that Super Bowl with the Philly special, so on and so forth, understanding the complexion of a game, understanding the identity of a game and the pulse of a game, right? Do you think this coaching staff has enough intuition, has enough experience, or what are they showing you to give you any confidence in the playoffs?
I think they've been amazing. They've had an answer for everything the opponent does, and it's clear to me they're the best team in the NFC. And I think a lot of that has to do with the coaching staff keeping them, because in this league you see so many performances from a good team that they just play down to somebody's competition and they wind up losing a game. This team has always had the answer on what they need. If some team presses them, they always have the answer on what to do. They always counter. I think that's really good leadership, and it's good coaching. It's a good game plan, and it's quarterback making good plays. Listen, if we're projecting like a game against the 49ers in the NFC Championship, and if they get past that to get to the Super Bowl against Buffalo or Kansas City, I don't know. I don't have enough knowledge. What I know is that they're the best team in the NFC. It's going to take a hell of an effort, defensive effort from San Francisco to beat them here to get to the Super Bowl. I fully expect them to get to the Super Bowl. And if they don't, it would be disappointing. And then we would see maybe some fallacies in their coaching ranks that they weren't ready for the moment. But right now, I would expect they would not be a favorite against Kansas City or Buffalo. And I'm okay with that because sometimes teams are better than your team. And that's the way I would feel about it. But I would be very disappointed if they didn't get through the NFC. And I can't sit here and complain at all about their coaching staff. Maybe special teams early in the year was a complaint. I think they buttoned that up a little bit better. So what am I complaining about? Right, like right now, it's just the uncertainty of the quarterback situation and how they're going to finish this season. It's a little bit of the secondary because of their injuries and how they're going to have to compensate for that. But I still think that they're the best team in the NFC. And I'm curious to know. I can throw it to you guys. San Francisco comes in here. The Eagles would have to be the favorite, right?
Yes. Today, if you're asking me to make a line today, I'd have to make the Eagles as a favorite. Brock Purdy has 3 more games like the last 3 games he had, and I might have to reevaluate that. But today, Eagles are the favorite against the 49ers. All right, Mikey, I'm going to take you over to the AFC, that potential Super Bowl opponent. My tongue is only partially implanted in cheek here. What if it's Dougie P? The Jaguars are in position to make the playoffs. So all I got to do is beat that Tennessee team that I watched last night. Yeah, Joshua Dobbs, nice story. Kid loves aeronautics. Comes in after only 8 days. Is better than the first-round draft pick they made, but that's not saying much. He couldn't even throw for 100 yards. I think they're going to beat Tennessee in 2 weeks, which means they're going to make the playoffs, which means they're going to get a home game because they're a divisional winner. What if Dougie P is standing there on the other sidelines in Arizona? How the Eagles going to handle that, Mr. Ellie?
Dougie P has no shot to get into that game. Come on, Jody. Stop with that. Well, I thought you were going to go with the other.
Lawrence is the real deal, Mike.
No, stop. They're not getting anywhere. Well, I thought you were going to go with the other scenario that everybody's talking about now, which is that Carson Wentz rescues the Commanders. They beat the Vikings, and then the first game is Wentz at Lincoln Financial Field against the Eagles. That's where I thought you were going to go with it. Now, that would be interesting. Wentz would get pummeled in that game, but that would be kind of an interesting scenario, right? The Vikings are like so flimsy. They're just such a survivor team. It wouldn't surprise me if the Commanders could win that game. But, this Wentz thing is it's very ironic that he's coming back now to rescue the Commanders.
It is. It's honestly hilarious. He's a guy, in my opinion, that's just fallen from grace tremendously, and I don't see any way of climbing back. We talk about teams who have so many quirks about them that it's kind of hard to believe in them, but at times it seems like the Eagles' own fan base, they struggle to be all in, at times. And you've covered this game, you've covered this team, you've covered this fan base for a long time, Mike, and I have to get your perspective on this. Why does it always seem like this fan base, this city is always waiting for the one shoe to drop when it comes to this Philadelphia Eagles team?
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I don't know if it applies to this team, though. I think that the majority of people really appreciate this team and think they're pretty good. But in general, the sky is falling mentality is a classic Philadelphia thing. That I tell them, I spent like 25 years trying to turn that around, and I was unsuccessful doing it on a daily basis. I don't understand the insecurity of people. Well, we know when a team's good, when a team's not, right? This team's pretty good. I think most of the people that follow this team know they're pretty good. And they look at the rest of the league and they say, well, who's better than them in the NFC? They must be the best team in the NFC. So I think that is what the prevailing attitude is this year. But you know why we do this. There's been so many disappointments. There's been so many bleak years. We're a major market, and we expect that we should be it's like me. I suffer with the Penn State thing that way. It's like, Penn State's a good program and people seem to be satisfied. They're not as good as Ohio State and Michigan. And it makes me nuts, right? So, but I know they're not as good as Ohio State and Michigan. So I don't get devastated when that happens. So I think we're just a little bit of an insecure fan base because of stuff that has happened in the past, and we don't recognize sometimes that maybe we're just not good enough in a certain thing. We accepted the Phillies thing, right? The Phillies lose to the Astros. Most of the fans in this town were resolute about, well, you know what? The Astros are probably better. So it wasn't as much of a heartbreak. And if the Eagles lose the Super Bowl to Buffalo or Kansas City, I think most people be realistic to think, man, you know what? We probably weren't as good as those two teams, but we just need a little more, and we will be.
That's an intriguing thought. Let's just hope we get there so we can have it at that time, the debate thereafter, leading up to. And
yeah,
then
it's funny. The national, I think people here are really ticked off at the national perception, even though they might believe the same thing. They hate the like, for instance, the ESPN and their power rankings.
Oh, their stupid computer rankings.
Yeah, they've been tweaking Philadelphia all year long.
I'm convinced Jerry Jones has a stake in ESPN somewhere. I'm telling you.
But this week, the Eagles are 2. You know, the athletic counters, by making the Eagles 4 to power rankings, they vault the Cincinnati Bengals ahead of the Eagles. Now, the Bengals are a nice team. They've come along. They shouldn't be ranked ahead of the Eagles as far as power rankings go. So that's the kind of thing you get, this provinciality that we have that we're never taken seriously. Those kind of things matter more than actually not believing in our team.
And shame on us for even listening, because power rankings mean 0. At least in college football, they mean something because it's subjectively decided who gets the 4-team spots to play for the playoffs. They have the standings in the NFL, which decides everything. So shame on us for giving it as much thought and as getting as invested in it as we do. And I'm guilty as charged as everybody else. By the way, the quarterback that the Eagles desperately wanted is going to beat the quarterback that they dismissed this week. Deshaun Watson goes into Washington and beats Carson Wentz, which will throw everything in even more of a tizzy, which will be fun for all of us.
Yeah, you think that's going to happen?
Yeah.
I
think Carson Wentz is Carson Wentz. He played okay coming in for Taylor Heineke. Look at the numbers after they and basically the same thing. They panicked by taking Taylor Heineke out. Yeah, I think Ron Rivera.
I got a sheet ahead of me because I make picks every week on my podcast on a Thursday, and I wrote that game down. Commanders -2.5, and then I realized Wentz was coming back, and I you see there's like a pen mark right through that game. I took that game right out of consideration.
Very good, smart on your part. All right, this week against the Saints, we talked about Dalton. Kamara hasn't practiced the last 2 days, but it's been an illness, so we expect him to play. Chris Olave is a question mark. How many points are Saints going to score against this defense? Now, his defense just got chewed up and spit out by Dak Prescott to the tune of 40 points last week. But we know they're better than that. It's one of those guys, chalk it up. How much better? How much of a rebound effort does the defense get against a Saints offense, which doesn't have a lot of weapons?
Yeah, I think the defense will be good against this team. I don't think the Saints are going to score a lot of points. However, I wonder how many points the Eagles can score here, because the Saints had this weird statistic where they're really good, one of the tops in the league against teams who get into the red zone. So I don't really know what that means. They hold a 48% scoring percentage or something, which would surprise me. But listen, if Kamara is not going crazy, and he had they're 5-1 when he rushes for 100, when the team rushes for 130 yards or something like that. So Taysom Hill's been getting some carries, all that stuff. They would have to do that. I mean, to have a fighting chance in this game, because I don't think Andy Dalton, with his weapons, has enough to beat the Eagles down the field. So it's the same template that the teams that try to do it against the Eagles: control the clock, run the ball, keep the Eagles offense off the board. But I don't think this team has that kind of firepower. So, I look at the Eagles like a 27-13 piece.
Yeah, it's the only way people can beat the Philadelphia Eagles, the only way teams can beat the Philadelphia Eagles is if the Philadelphia Eagles beat themselves, and that's if they turn the ball over, right? And two players who have directly contributed to turnovers, who are currently in the doghouse right now, are Quez Watkins and Miles Sanders. And, those two guys truly need to have a bounce back week. Miles Sanders probably more likely has a chance of doing that because he's the main running back. Quez Watkins maybe not so much because he's wide receiver 3. But this question more so is for Quez Watkins. Should the Eagles consider giving Zach Pascal more reps over Quez? Because Quez has shown an inability to be a disciplined route runner, if you ask me. And this isn't a Quez Watkins bashing session, but Quez Watkins, I watch him and I see a guy who rounds off his routes. I see a guy who doesn't play the position strongly. I see a guy who doesn't catch. I see a guy who doesn't attack the ball. I'm curious to know what's your perspective on Quez Watkins, and maybe you could throw in your perspective on Miles Sanders and his bounce back as well.
Yeah, you're right about Quez Watkins. I mean, last week we saw it. He wasn't tough enough on a couple of throws, and he's going to have to get tough. And maybe the coaching staff looks at that and said, we can't afford that. Now, he is option 3, and he can make some big plays. So they got to balance that against what Pascal brings them. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make that kind of a move. He's going to have to learn to get tougher. I mean, that's the one thing about Quez Watkins. He's going to have to learn to catch tougher and get his hands tougher and his body. The way A.J. Brown shielded, he's not as big as A.J. Brown, but he's got to use his body more to get tougher to make those catches. Miles Sanders worries me because he was a fumbler at one point, and that was a knock on him, especially when he was at Penn State, even though he was dynamic. I worry about running backs that fumble in a couple straight games, whether that's in their head again, and whether now I can't fumble. When you do that, you kind of play more protective and you're more likely to fumble. That's the way I've always looked at it. So, yeah, I'm concerned about that. I think this has to be a bounce back week. I think they'll get plenty of opportunities. The Saints aren't good against the run. I would expect that they would, with Minshew, they would run right at him a little more. So we'll see.
All right, Mike, 2-part question. Eagles versus Giants next week. This week's results are what they are, and you can project and predict, or you can just let them be. Eagles versus Giants next week. The starting quarterback for the New York Giants is who?
Oh, you don't think that they'll play Jones?
If they win tomorrow or they win on Sunday, they lock up a playoff spot. They can't get any higher. They can't go any lower. They win, they're in, and there's really not a whole hell of a lot to play for in week number 18. Who's their starting quarterback?
I think they'd still start Jones and maybe have a like playing for a half. I don't really. I haven't given that much thought because I think if the Eagles lose, that Jalen Hurts is going to have to play against the Giants. So I don't know. I would think they would start Jones just to keep it going. You know.
The reason why I bring it up, because you were on the air at the time on the Fanatic. You remember how nuts Giants fans were? How dare Dougie P put Nate Sudfeld into the game with playoffs on the line, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
If the Eagles lose this week and Tyrod Taylor is the Giants' backup quarterback and he starts with the possibility that the Cowboys could win it all and more than Minnesota and or San Francisco, how dare you go to your backups? The integrity of the National Football League. That's all we heard from Giant fans, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would shove it back in their face. I hadn't really thought about that angle. I'm glad you brought that up because now I have to pay attention to that angle.
There you go.
Yeah. Well,
Mikey missed. We pay attention to you on the post-game show every single week. Please give D-Gun. Well, I know Tone can, but I'm asking you to do so. It comes from you. It means a little bit more. Tell D-Gun, Seth, and Devin that I send my regards.
I'm going to bring Seth a nice bottle of bourbon. He's a bourbon connoisseur. So, maybe I can give him a sip to calm him down for that.
Good luck with that. Mike, thanks. We appreciate you jumping in, big guy.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Mike Missinelli, host of the JAKIB Media Eagles post-game show right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, usually live from Oceans. You'll be down at Oceans on Sunday, right, Don?
Yes, sir.
Yes, he will.
That's the plan. That's the plan.
All right, we'll roll on. We've still got predictions to go. I'm looking forward to seeing the way Tone sees this game between the Eagles and the Saints playing out. We'll come back and put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.